Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to part 2 of 3 of my interview with Will Asher. Waterski podcast here. No intro for this one. We are just going to jump back into the interview from where we left off last time. And really here Will covers some of his big successes with the Raging Cajuns Waterski team, his 2 world titles, and we sort of end this part 2 with the beginning of the changing of the guard, as he says, at HO Skis, and the beginning of his journey with that, which will continue in part 3. Part 2 of this interview is brought to you by the FlowPoint Method. And by now you should know, FlowPoint Method is a brand new online waterski training program developed by Jenny LaBaw and Marcus Brown. You know Marcus, the dreads guy, does super cool videos, knows a ton about skis and water skiing. Yeah, that guy. So really, performance in any sport depends on a lot of factors. And, nutrition, strength and conditioning, mindset, technique is not just where your hips are or your distance from tail of your fin. And really, Jenny and Marcus adopt an holistic approach in creating this FlowPoint method for people who are truly committed to take their skiing to the next level. They cover technique, fitness, nutrition, mindset, truly holistic approach to life on the water. I love it. Personally, I've been doing a lot of the exercises that Jenny has as part of the weekly training there, and I am sore, but I know that I'm working towards improving my skiing. And on top of this, I am collaborating with them on the mindset section of the FlowPoint method. So if you'll become a member, you'll get some mindset advice and strategies from yours truly. Daily, weekly updates, and an extremely extensive library of videos, instructionals, and writings. You can finally remove all the guesswork and get the most out of your time on the water. You can become a member of the FlowPoint Method and support the podcast by going to thewaterskipodcast.com/FlowPointMethod or click on the link in the show notes. So again, thewaterskipodcast.com/FlowPointMethod, one word. Check it out. They also have a free 3 days trial for you to kind of see what's going on there and why this program can really bring your skiing to the next level. Second announcement, as you probably have heard on part 1, we had made an attempt to record this podcast online, like via Skype, and then there were some issues, but we have managed to preserve Will's audio. So I will be uploading some of those clips, I guess bits, on the Waterski Bits. So if you haven't subscribed to the Waterski Bits and you love this podcast, well, what are you doing? Go online, look up for the Waterski Bits. You can listen to it on the website or find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all the good apps. That's it. Jumping back into the interview with Will, and stick around for Tuesday when we'll publish part 3. Yeah. All right. So yeah, you get exposed to this difference in collegiate skiing. First nationals. So that must have been your first fall at UL. You go to Collegiate Nationals. Tell me what that was like.
It was mind-blowing. Yeah, the amount of energy around a water ski tournament. I mean, hundreds of people the same age as you, just
the tents, right?
The tents, the teams, the spirit, the dancing, the cheering, it like completely opened my eyes to something else. As soon as I went to that event, I'm like, this is for me. Like, I am more passionate about this college scene of water skiing, and I need to try and maximize this.
Kind of maybe brought back that whole aspect of play that you had growing up that you enjoyed.
Yeah, it brings a bit more balance to it.
Yeah.
So it came out of a period of my life, a few years of, I went from play to then definitely getting more structure when we got the funding from the British team. It definitely became very serious and very just performance oriented, like medals. Got to get medals at Worlds and Europeans and to keep the funding, and that was the stress in life.
Yeah.
We're relying on you because you're good, or other people in the team as well, but your medal chance, you got to take this very seriously. And similar to Lafayette, if you don't do well, then nobody else gets the funding.
Right.
But to come back to Lafayette and just to see the balance of the two. I mean, our team was very serious. We were very much like the British team. You know, it was leading up to nationals. It was all about training. It was all about performance.
Trick run has to be solid. You got to have your buoys down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about a solid score. We're not looking for you to break records or do these things. It's more about just do what you can do, make sure it's good.
And then you showed up to nationals. You get a little bit of this like, oh, wow, this is like there's a lot of plates. There's a lot of spirit. But certainly you guys were there with a goal, winning the nationals. Did it happen your first year?
No, it didn't happen our first year. We kind of knew our first year we didn't have the team. We had some pretty big holes. It was more on the girls' side. Mm-hmm. Our guys' side was actually pretty strong. But the girls' side, you know, we had like one or two good skiers.
Yeah.
We were missing like the Danielle Bennett's and some of the
solid
some of the
skiers
people that filled in a really big way.
Yeah.
You know, they came the next year in 2003, and as soon as we heard the recruiting and who was going to come, and we're like, well, we've built a team that we haven't seen since, well, we'd never seen it, but the school hadn't seen since I think 95 or 96 when they won their last national championships.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I think we can actually win this thing. And that kind of brought in a whole new dynamic for the team. For me, that was kind of where my headspace was, from the British team stuff. It's like, well, we kind of go there to win, but then for the whole team to feel that energy and kind of rally behind everyone, and it became the biggest thing in our life.
Yeah, and I think the difference there is certainly with the British team, the system might have been geared towards obviously the medals and a part of like a team aspect of Europeans and worlds and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you were training for your own scores and that. But then in college, it kind of changes, right? Because your scores are only as good as they can help the team win, right? So I can see how, as you saw recruits coming, you're like, maybe your mindset of like organization was like, okay, now we can train, and you had learned that from the British sort of way of doing things. But certainly now the scope was like, yeah, like this is a team effort, and especially a team win.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, right away at the beginning of before the full season coming into nationals, you'd write out the team. Like what's the options, what's the availability, where are our weaknesses, and it was basically, okay, well, we're gonna have here's gonna be our main guys. They're almost a shoe-in at a certain point, but then there's some holes, whether it's in women's slalom or men's tricks or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's like, well, we've got people on the team that are very good skiers, but that isn't necessarily their focus. Or, like I don't want to really pick people out, but I will. I remember Carrie Lee.
Yeah.
She was, really loved tricking, didn't really like slalom. But it's like, well, if we can get Carrie Lee to kind of get deep 32 off, then her score is just going to become that solid score.
And it's going to make a huge difference, right? Because again, I've said in other podcasts as well, but like so the difference between you running 5 at 39 or 3 at 41 is like 20 points.
It doesn't make any difference, yes.
Whereas maybe her from going to 2 at 28 to 2 at 32 is 200 points.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Yeah, so little things like, and that's what we did for the whole team. So it's, for me, I had to focus on tricks.
Yeah.
Like that became my big focus, was tricks and jump. I knew if I went out there and did my slalom score, I was going to be top 2, 3, whatever.
Right.
I had to compete against T-Gas, so I know he's going to be training. It's not guaranteed to win. A couple of these people that are, it's like the energy I can put in to try and save that 5 or 10 points versus me putting in the time to maybe make my ski line 5 or my flips or whatever just solid.
And gain 100 points.
Gain 100 points and then getting the jump, so we're jumping over 170, just kind of getting to that potential level. That's the stuff that really brings in the points.
That's what we were doing too. I think me and Alvaro started doing this thing. We would identify some kind of I don't know how to call them, not bubbles, but say men's slalom or women's tricks. No, sorry. Let me wrap my mind around this. Women's slalom. Mm-hmm. You have every year 6 to 7 skiers with 2 at 38.
Yeah.
You get a piece of 3 at 38, it's like 60 points, right? So, getting these left foot forward skiers, you gotta get to 3. You need that score, and then obviously even more importantly at the lower levels, like women's slalom again, if you run 28 off as opposed to 2 or 3 buoys at 28 off, is a huge difference. So, okay, girl X, what ski are you on? We gotta get on a better ski. You know,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I think she was skiing like a KD Platinum, and the fin was like 2.6 deep, 6.9 something. I'm like, okay, we can do something with this.
Right,
You know,
right.
at least get her to be a bit more consistent.
Yeah, I remember a story. Lorenzo D'Alberto, a great tricker. I think he actually won nationals once or twice. But it was a bit of a wakeboarder style tricker, you know, like, I landed ski line 7 once. It's the first trick in the run. And then we had, like, me, Craig, we had to surround him and say, okay, dude, this is your run in nationals.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
it's 5,300 points. It's plenty enough. You're going to stand it up 98% of the times. This is what we need, you know? So it becomes really a team thing.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yep.
And yeah, I totally sacrificed my slalom every time because I knew it's not that important. And I won nationals twice.
In slalom?
In slalom, yeah. But I mean, my focus was if I could win overall, that would be even better.
Exactly.
So the year I won slalom, broke the record. That was a 3.5 at 41. Came second in jump, and I won overall.
Wow.
So it was like, you know, my brother, he won jump. He went 180. I went 177. Tied with Ryan Dodd. He went 177.
That's a big one.
That was a big tournament. Yeah, that was super cool.
It's funny how we have those memories of like, kind of like when Mano told me that like at a junior world she beat Jacinta, you know, like, so you're kind of holding on to the, hey, I tied with Ryan Dodd at one tournament one time, you know, it's cool.
No,
it's cool.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was 2003. And I'm sure, you know, you were stoked about how you skied, but I'm assuming the stoke was the team won. Talk to me about that.
That's like everything was about the team. Like my individual performance did not matter. I didn't care that I won or broke the record or whatever. That wasn't even a factor in it. It was about keeping it together, being there first skier of the day, you know, waking up before sunrise, making sure you're there so you can support every single skier and give everyone all the attention they deserve. And everyone fed off that. And that's what it was about. It was about getting that ring. It was about getting that national title. And at that point in 2003, we didn't really know what that meant. You know, it was like...
Yeah, none of your generation had it, yeah.
Yeah, and happened in like 8-9 years, whatever. So it was like, yeah, like we didn't really know what it meant, but we kind of had a pretty good feeling of what it meant. You know, we lost it the year before. Like Monroe got one. Well, that looked pretty cool. Like it'd be nice to be a part of that. And then, you know, to go through the whole event and then just see everybody ski to their potential. Like there was no sad faces on the bus on the way home. Everyone did their thing. Everyone did their job.
And even skiing wise is such a different experience, right? I remember when we won in 2010, I was spinning for Nancy. And I mean, we're talking about someone that had won under 21 worlds, that already podium at worlds, you know, like a great skier. And she did her hand run, which was bulletproof solid. We knew it. And after, because, you know, the cool thing about trick skiing in college is that you do one pass and then that's it. So you boat back. Yeah. I was like, Nancy, great job. She goes, I've never been this nervous in my entire life. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Because she knew that, you know, there were, I don't know, 16, 15, however many we were, relying on her doing 51 instead of like 45 or whatever it was, you know? Like, so it's a strange experience. But when you get the treat, it's the best treat.
I can relate to that 100%. Like the pressure. I mean, because tricks for me, I had a pretty decent trick run. I had one, you know, I could piece together one pass.
Do you remember it?
What my run was?
Yeah.
I think it was like ski line O, ski line back, wake 5 front or something, and then like flip back to front, ski line 5, something like that.
Whoa, okay. So ski line heavy.
Yeah, I could do ski lines.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know how I took to that because I'm kind of tall.
Right.
But I like doing ski lines. Yeah, that was my thing.
Sweet.
Yeah. Flips, not so much. I never understood like the pop off the wake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see some people now and they're just like little butterflies in the air. Like
Right.
watch Pato Font, you're like, come on, dude.
How do you go up so easily, right?
Yeah, it's not even the same sport.
Yeah. So we're talking about obviously 2003 and, Collegiate Nationals win. And going back to the balancing act of, institutional tournaments, collegiate tournaments, school, that year you went to your first Open Worlds.
Yeah, I did.
Swiss ski school.
Yeah, Swiss. Wow, a lot of firsts at that event. It's kind of a blur to me because I meant to look it up actually, but do you remember what time of the year that was? Was it like a September?
I'm going to assume August, September,
I
something
think I was
like
already
that,
in
right?
school. I was either in school or it was like the week school started.
Okay.
I can already look that up, but anyway, no, that really matters. But I just remember, I was starting to run 39. I mean, I've been running it, I think, a couple of years really. It was starting to become consistent. It's starting to become part of my program. And I didn't go into it ever thinking that I was going to be close to having a win, or, my goal was just to make finals and just kind of have fun with the whole process. We went there as a team. It was all funded. Andy was on the team. So, he was the...
Oh, that's right. So your first World, you were in the team with Andy.
Yeah, which it was in Orlando, so I didn't really get to see him,
Right.
It wasn't like we hung out together. We had an apartment, I don't know, somewhere near Disney as a team. So that was cool that we got to do that as a team. We ate together. We did all that stuff. But I didn't get really to hang out with Andy, which maybe would have been pretty cool. But I just remember thinking, okay, well, if I can just do what I do in practice, which is what I've done my whole life, then there's a chance that I can make the finals. And
going back to that thinking, like, if I've been doing it in practice, I'm going to do it at tournament.
Yeah. And that always stuck with me. Even now, I don't like to practice easy. I don't, it's not something that I do. I don't say, hey, John, weave for me, or hey, John,
right,
whoever's driving me. But still try and keep it pretty legit for the most part. But back to 03, yeah, I got, just ran my 39, got 1.5, I think, at 41. I can't remember. I guess Andy went out after me or before me. I don't even remember the sequence of events. I'd imagine I think I probably went off pretty early. So my big thing as a kid is if I was in a position where I'd know what the final was, I would do just enough to make the final. And I'd want to be within the first 2 or 3 or 4 off the dock.
Yeah.
And it kind of came back to, I had a few events when I was younger and I was last off the dock. And it was that feeling of being last off the dock, and you're on the dock by yourself and it's very quiet and it's very lonely. And then you have this score, and it's like everything in your body goes from doing what you know you have to do to somehow you have this thing to beat.
Right.
And the focus for me in the early years went to how do I beat this score? And it just blew my mind every single time. Like I wasn't able to do it. But so I was probably off early, and I got my 1.5 at 41, and then people just kind of kept going down, and then Jeff went out, and Jeff was famous for showing up the night before a tournament or the morning of a tournament, driving 15 hours from North Carolina, wherever he's from, and he just went out and ripped it. And he got that full 2 buoys and took the title. And
crazy to think. I mean, I've only watched videos, but I think that pool he did from 1 to 2 is one of the pools that stands out to me as like one of the craziest pools I've ever seen.
You've seen the video?
I've seen the video. Like he pulls from 1 to 2, left foot forward. He's probably, I don't know, a foot tall. If in the water, it's just everything all out. And then that was at the time where you could still like
handle above the head, get the full 2. Yeah.
Just, so he played that beautifully and just like tossed it there to full buoys.
Yeah, yeah. That was the rule then. Was you can put the handle up, and he did it. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine how good he felt. I know that would have been a huge, huge deal for him. Because he's Jeff's like the first to do a lot of things. He was the first guy to run 39 in a tournament, the first guy to run 41 in a tournament. Like he's done a lot of the big stuff.
Right.
Then for him to get that world title, I'd say would be the huge cherry on his career. And just like, you know, it just makes it, you're the world champion. I've done these things. I've broken the records. I was the first to do this, first to do that. But I can imagine if he didn't have that world title, maybe he would look back and be like, well, I just didn't get that cherry.
Right.
Yeah, but he got the cherry. Man.
Yeah.
And that's
good. Yeah, I really hope I'll be able to get him in front of a microphone.
That'd be an interesting chat.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that guy. Oh, I love
Exactly.
That guy. Yeah.
But I remember you telling me that experience, I'm not saying that it didn't leave a mark, but when I asked you in 1.0, like, hey, how was that? You know, like, yeah, I went, I did what I, you know, like it, I don't know. Like,
it was kind of like I was in a way groomed for it. You know, through the British team, it's like, okay, we train, we do this, you reach this score, there's a good chance you can do it. Just go out and do what you can do.
Yeah.
And I remember being pretty stoked. Like I never, as a kid, like a world championship maybe would be a goal, be a dream. But I don't remember living the celebration for very long. I think it was a case of we did it, and then on Monday had to be back at school.
Right.
And we kind of get back into the grind, and then it's, you know, right away back to, okay, we've got college nationals, we've got to get ready for that. I mean, that's the most important thing in the world. Last year we lost college nationals. This year, this is our year. We've got the team, we've got the commitment, and like if we don't win it this year, we're never going to win it. We're going to be cursed for life.
Right.
So
because it sounded like you had that team, like that year was like, it's for us to lose almost.
Oh, it was a dream. It was the dream team. We had depth everywhere. Like there was not a hole in the whole system.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it was, you know, Monroe definitely had some holes. You know, they had a few strong skiers. You know, Ryan and Brienne, and I think they had Alexei, and they had, you know, definitely some people that were probably going to win events, but they didn't have the fourth, fifth guys.
Right.
And that's where the points.
That's where the points are.
Yeah, if your fourth, fifth guy can be top 10 or top 5, you know, up there, and that's really where the points come from. So really, it was, you know, we got back to college in September, and everything was geared towards college nationals. Mm-hmm. How do we maintain this? How do we get the best out of the team? How do I get my grades back?
Right. Right.
Been gone along, or try and keep that rolling as well. But.
So, and that was 2003, and you guys pretty much kind of did what you were geared to do, won nationals. Now, 2005, you won again, but that was a bit of a different experience, wasn't it? A bit of a different coming from the back.
So 2003, we had the team. 2004 and 5, Monroe and Lafayette, I'd say, were even. Like the teams were equally stacked across the board. In 2004, we lost by 5 points. And that stung like crazy. There was a couple of people, you know, I didn't slalom that well. You know, I came like third or fourth or something. Like I wasn't, there's people along the way that lost the points. So we ended up losing by 5 points. But the year after that, I'd say is probably the most legendary comeback in college skiing history.
And and I can't wait to hear about it. But just to bring some context to these 5 points, one placement is 10 points, right? Like in one category, in one event, in one gender. So you lost by half of that, which really meant that someone tied along the way, so the points were split. I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah, I think it was like one of the girls' trickers tied with another Monroe tricker.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and they lost that. Oh, they you know.
Yeah, I mean, just to make the audience understand, this is like 5 points out of 10,000.
Yeah,
you know, like
it's
nothing.
crazy. I mean, to think about it, and we're so coming into the jump final, we're 190 points behind, or like some crazy amount of points. Like, never gonna make this up, but there's still a chance. And
this is 2005, right?
2005. Yeah, this is like the legendary comeback year, and we're like, we don't quit. Like we're gonna stick it out to the end. We're gonna, you know, as we lost points along the way, there's a chance that, you know, we can gain these points back. It's still feasible. So we had a strong jump team. It was me, Casey, Pipe, Miranda, Tom, and Mikkel Anderson. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of thinking, well, if we can get this rolling to start with, and we get a good jump on the board, like And I knew I liked to go out early in the series, so I went out first. I knew that Tom and Mikkel and Pipe, they'll do their thing, but if you know Casey, if you get Casey fired up, this guy can do amazing things.
Yeah.
He's not the best at, like, you know, he needs that energy. He needs to have the stoke.
If the spark is there, he'll go for it.
Man, he'll like go for it. But there's a chance that if the spark isn't there, then maybe, you know, he might leave something on the table. So I'm like, fuck it. Okay, I can do this. I like to go first. And I went out there, and it's like I was able to kind of judge the situation a bit, had a bit of international, I don't know, experience. And I went out and jumped like 175, I think it was. And it kind of, that like sparked the whole thing. I think Monroe's first guy went like 146. You know, it's like, wow, that's already, we've gained this many points on this guy.
Right.
And Casey went out, he jumped 170. Like, he just spanked it right from the beginning. You know, he comes in, he's freaking out, losing his voice. Everyone's singing the Cajun song. Then, you know, Mikkel goes out 177. BB goes out 170, whatever. And then Tom goes out 180.
Boom.
Wins the event. And it's like, at the end of it, you don't really know what's going on. We didn't have the computers, but Monroe had the computers. I think Jim Jacobs was over there, and he always kept track of it. You know, he has the calculator thing in him. So, and you just kind of see them plug in the score in, and you can just see like the air out of the balloon just kind of like, it's not stoked.
It's not smiling.
There's not much smiling going on. And we're like, well, maybe it's true. And there's some whispering from the tower, and then it got announced, and just that feeling right there, to have the comeback and then see the look in everybody's face on the team. I will never forget that.
Wow.
That is like one of the, I would say, the biggest win of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't my win. It was our win. And
see, like, to me, it's so cool to hear it from you, because I would say the Nationals that we won in 2010 is the biggest win I've ever had, because it was our win.
Yeah.
But I haven't achieved in the sport what you have achieved.
Right.
And for you to say that, it's even way more telling. You know?
Because I got goosebumps, kind of. It's. I think it's because I did it with my best friends. It's like these people that we grew. Like, our lives changed together, in a way. You know, I went from being a immature kid with no future. Essentially, I didn't see myself as having much of a future. If I could ski and that became a thing, awesome. But like, to be educated and have these things, and but all the experiences we gained together, and then to go to battle together, and then come out on top. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you would say 2005 over 2003, in terms of like dearest, fondest memory about Collegiate Nationals?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, 2003 was special for sure. I mean, but I think by 2005, I've already had 3 Collegiate Nationals. I have a very clear understanding of what this means.
Right.
You know, I went through the process of, you know, losing the first one, team won the second one, and you kind of have that experience. But then by losing it again and then winning it, you really know what it means. Mm-hmm. You know, you are. Yeah, 2005 was definitely the big one. Yeah.
So those were your 2 collegiate wins. Well, you also had another 2 big wins. You won 2 world titles. And I would like to tease those out. So the first one was China 2005, yeah? Yeah. So 2 years after you got second, Swiss, you fly to China for Worlds. Tell me about that.
So, 2005, flying to China. I mean, I never thought I'd go to China.
Right.
China. We got there day one. It's like 100 degrees. Can't see it in the lake because it's so much smog. Like, so much pollution. And then we end up getting this crazy storm, and then the air quality just clears out. Becomes like Bluebird kind of place. Okay. It's so trippy. Yeah. But I didn't think I'd be able to win, because we've been competing all summer, and, you know, it was the year of Jamie Beauchesne and Chris Parrish, essentially. You know, Andy had retired that year. Yeah. So Andy didn't go to the Worlds. So it was basically Chris Parrish's year. You know, if I would get a 3 at 41, he would beat it. He'd get a 4 at 41. Whatever it was. He was that good that year. But they actually didn't make the finals. Like Chris and Jamie weren't there. Whatever. Weird conditions first round. We were in China. The food was shitty. Like trying to walk into the food court and it just smelled like dead fish. Like it was a miserable experience for the food. I lived on rice. I brought tins of tuna and baked beans. So I'd go down to the restaurant, I'd get rice and then just mix tuna and baked beans. And I ate that for a week.
Wow.
That was my food. But when they didn't make the final, I was kind of sat there and was with Ferraro and he was like, well, normally if they don't win, they're normally 1, 2, and then you're a third, like 100% of the time. Like you're not fourth. So they're not in it, so then that bumps you up to first. He's
Straight
like,
talker, Ferraro.
yeah. He's like, it's kind of, but here's like the plan of what you do.
Okay.
And it's you don't need to worry about that, just in case you were thinking about it, because I was a thinker. He's like, I'm going to put it on the table. Here's what you do. When you have speed on the gates, 2 hands long, and attack, that's when you run your best score. So I was out there and I was skiing, and that's the only things I was thinking about was speed on gates, 2 hands long, and just attack.
Mm-hmm.
That equals results.
Yeah. So that, if I recall correctly, like the scores were pretty high. I think to qualify was 3.5 or 4 at 39. There was a bunch of 2 at 41s in the prelim, a bunch of 2 in the finals.
Yeah.
So the level was pretty high skiing.
High skiing, yeah. Yeah, really high skiing. I remember thinking that too. I was like, shit. There's no way. Like, you've really got to bring your A game to win a world title.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long time ago now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
17 years.
It is.
Well, 15 years.
Yeah.
15 years. Yeah, I was thinking 2003.
So finals, were you like, again, earlier on the dock, or were you towards the end?
Well, I would have been earlier on. That's what I did. So I was, towards the end, I'd always be Series 1 at least. So you're like top 12 or I think it's top 12. And then hopefully you're kind of mid-pack of that. And you just know what the score is halfway through. And I'd normally just shoot for that score.
Right.
And I didn't want to be the bottom score. I'd be like the second score. And that was basically my plan. So I wanted to go out first so I could have a clear mind and not be poisoned by, the big scores that could potentially come.
So basically, and then you did 3 of 41 in the final.
Yeah.
So that must have been early on. And then everyone but one person didn't match that score.
Yeah, my bro. yeah.
Who was that?
Glenn Campbell.
Yep.
My childhood hero. This guy, we live really close to each other, like 20, 30 minutes from each other. We never slalom together. We never actually slalom trained together.
Ah.
But we trick trained together.
What?
I know. Check this one out. So in England, the thing in the winter was to do winter trick training.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn was doing winter trick training.
I would have loved
figure that
to
one
see
out.
that.
I know. But he hit it hard for a winter. A couple of winters he'd come over and we'd do it every weekend. Trick 4 sets a day, so 8 sets in a weekend. And then, but Glenn was always the cool guy to be around because he'd always have the toys. He'd have the petrol, gasoline-powered remote control cars, or he'd have this, or he'd always have the cool shit.
Yeah.
He had the nice car, he had the company car, or whatever it was. But
and he's the coolest guy to hang out with on top of this, so that helps.
Yeah, just to be in that environment, because it wasn't luxury when we were doing winter trick training. We basically lived in a shed, so a bit like my workshop up there.
Mm-hmm.
We had a space heater in it, and then we skied out of it all weekend. We just hung out in there. We had music playing, Dr. Dre, whatever it was back in the day, and we'd just ski. Like, had the dry suits on, breaking ice, 4 sets a day. But yeah, anyway, it was my bro, Glenn Campbell. And I went out first, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened. He tied me. I can't even remember. It may have been the other way around. But we're on the dock. I said to Glenn, I'm like, look, honestly, this is like the best scenario I could ever imagine being in. If you win or I win, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. I said that to him. Maybe it was psychological, but that's really how I felt at the time. That was
Well,
pretty cool.
to me, that's the important part, right?
Yeah. It was just we were on the dock and we were just like, you can imagine Glenn's Cheshire grin.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And I was happy too, because we were just, we traveled across the world together and we were in this position together, and it meant so much for the funding and the team. And
there's also those implications, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just huge to have a gold and a silver. And then also the team did well that Worlds as well. Jason, Tom, Damien, like everyone that was there skied really well.
Right.
But that was cool to be in that situation. There was no one else in the world I want to be in that situation with.
Right. And you succeeded. You won.
Took it. Yeah.
First day, first few hours, first day, first week, first couple of months.
When the job's done, it's very much like, let's go to the bar.
Right.
Let's have a couple of drinks, Glenn's giving the woohoos, big old cheers.
On top of this, like, who would you want to party instead of Glenn Campbell after a world championship?
I know. Well, that's not the best thing for me, because I'm kind of a lightweight and he is far from a lightweight. So for me, a couple of beers and I'm in trouble.
Right.
He can go a little bit longer than that. He saved me actually a couple of times at Europeans. This is how good of a friend we are. I remember it was like George Hatsis cornered me at a table drinking red wine. He's like, "Come on, you pussy. Yeah, you can drink with me. Yeah, let's do this." I'm like, and Glenn was seeing this from the other side of the room. And he like came over and he sat next to me. He's like, "Picking on Will, you drink with me."
Okay.
Yeah.
You found the wrong drinking buddy
Yeah,
now.
like you could just see the look on George's face, like, "Oh God, here we go." And then Glenn took him down. Did the teammate thing. He had my back. There's a real friend there. Yeah. So, minutes was definitely, celebrate as a team. Probably the jump final was coming up a little bit later on, so you don't want to get too drunk.
Right.
You want to be there. You got to focus. You got to go do that kind of stuff. Got the presentations, and then the job's done at that point, We couldn't really go too deep because it's kind of pretty similar to 2003. You got to get back. You got college nationals. So flying back straight to Lafayette, try and catch up with school, probably behind.
Right.
So the celebration doesn't really last that long in the short term, but then after college nationals, you get into party season. Ski season's over. Time to relax, focus on school a little bit, get in the rhythm of,
right.
Okay, how do you structure your nights out in the week based on study and training and that kind of stuff?
I got this test on Thursday, then means Thursday night we meet here. But I'm more curious to hear, like, how it impacted you personally. And the reason why I say that is, well, one, if we consider the majors in our sport, there's no definite or official things, but I think as skiers, we will consider Moomba, Masters, and Worlds as like the three top tournaments, right? And you won it. As you said, you had sort of been bred into a system that changed over time, but to a system to reach these kind of goals, winning Masters, winning Worlds. It must have, maybe it was after Collegiate Nationals, maybe it was after the season, but it must have featured like, I'm world champ,
I guess I wasn't really thinking in terms of that, but it changed my life big time. I mean, it made that, it's kind of like what I said to T-Gas after he won Worlds, and I really meant that because I'd heard it before from somebody else. I think maybe someone said it to Jeff. I mean, Jeff had already accomplished a lot, but he's like, "Hey, you're going to have this for the rest of your life."
Right.
It may have been even Jeff had said that to me, or someone had said that to me, but I shared that with him. But it was always a thing of, well, okay, you've done these, you won a tournament here, you won a tournament there, because by that point I hadn't really won. I think I had Prince's Pro-Am and Malibu Open, and then 2005, I didn't really have, I didn't have any like more titles than that, but it was always like, oh, Will Asher, world champion. Like that's a big
difference, right?
Yeah, it felt like a big difference, and it never felt like something that I would ever throw out there. Like if it was in a negotiation or if it was in anything, it was like, we'd be like, oh yeah, if I was in like, oh, this is Will Asher, he's the world champion, and to this day it still comes up. Yeah. Even though my last one was 2009, it was 11 years ago. It it never does stop being that. Like
Right.
you are always the world champion, which that's cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I remember being brought up like something that my dad told me was like, because I was trying to chase some kind of national dolphin record that Matteo Yanni had or something like that, and I didn't get it, right? And I was upset, right? And he said, well, it's when you win tournaments, the medal might be a stupid piece of metal, but it stays. Like you have won the X year, X tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a record comes and goes,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, obviously bring it to the scale about world championships and world records, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly why I asked you, because of what Thomas told me in his interview,
Right.
what you told him, right?
Yeah. Because we're competitors at that. We're like, you know, the legendary rivals.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
And it's probably just because we've never had the opportunity to really hang out beyond the place. Like the only time we've ever really got to hang out is on a start dock.
Yeah.
You know? And that's
Not the most friendly environment to hang out.
probably not the best time to hang out with me or
Anyone.
anyone else that we're competing against. You know, you're trying to get an advantage, or you're trying to, whether it's mental or whatever it is, it's the place where you're trying to be your strongest.
Yeah.
Because you've got to go out there and you've got to perform your best. So it's, you know, I've always tried to do it in a respectful way of try not to be an asshole, but you can't help it. You
Yeah.
know, like you're about to go to war. But
And you've been so maybe said this way, the analogy sounds strong, but you've been at war with this guy for decades.
yeah, since we're, I mean, I don't remember the exact first time we really got against each other. I think he said, I was listening to his podcast.
Right.
It was fun to hear him speak and hear the stories too. But I think he said I think that might have been like Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
When, in 94, when we were like 14, 15, when he won his first Europeans. But until like years later, I wasn't thinking of myself as a slalom skier. I was like an overall skier.
Right.
So he wasn't necessarily the guy that I was focusing on, because I was wanting to be an overall jumper. Slalom was like, if I can be good in slalom, that helps my overall.
With Tom as an example, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not an overall skier, you don't make the team. So when I was a kid, my mom would always be, or my parents both, like, well, unless you can trick. I was asking my mom about it last week. She's like, well, why do you make me trick so much? She's like, well, if you didn't trick, first it was 6,000 points. If you can't trick 6,000 points, you're not going to be on the ski team, on the British team. So I was always like the cherry. I got to trick 6,000 points. And then before I could slalom, I had to trick once or twice and ride my jump skis and stuff like that.
Right. The hierarchy of priority, right?
Yeah.
Trick so you can slalom so you can jump so you can go in the middle of the lake.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, back to, well, we didn't really cover it here in 2.0,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was definitely my hierarchy of the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to play. That was it. How do I get to play? Well, first you got to trick, then you got to jump, then you got to slalom, then you can go play.
Right.
Yeah, final
Right,
priority, yeah.
So no, I mean, that rivalry, I think probably a lot of people think about it starting in 2005, although it started way earlier, simply because for 8 years, the two of you just sort of bounced that gold medal off each other.
Yeah.
For 8 years, you know, like
Yeah.
it was you, then him, then you, then him, right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of after 2009, slalom became more of a thing. Or 2009, 1999.
Right.
When I came over to Florida and I got to ski with Andy. I don't know if we covered this in 2.0.
Yeah, we did a little bit, yeah.
Did we? Yeah. When I tried to ski, right. Then after that, I kind of knew that I could be good at slalom too. And then I started to realize who were the players in slalom. And then this guy, big old Italian.
Right.
He just kept coming up, and he was, kind of the thorn in your side. And you kind of like I said, you don't know who's going to be there week and year after year, but he was always there. And even now, he's there. Like he's made a career of it, and he's made a successful career of it. And that's very respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, like, just jokingly with some friends, we were having conversations about like top 5 skiers of all time, and the two of you are in there,
Yeah.
like, so, and the fact that you've managed to get to this gota, like by competing against each other.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure we've been a motivation for each other along the way. Yeah.
I can say for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that he had pictured me a couple of times when he's in the gym, like
Right.
punching bag or something.
Right.
Yeah, maybe I did the same. But always in good heart, you know, would never want anything bad to come of him. And, you know, always wanted to compete against the best.
Yeah.
And he brought the best. And he definitely made it so it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah, I would say definitely one of the things you guys have in common is like fierceful competitors, you know, which you need to, as you said, to go to war, like to be good at a sport, like as sometimes lonely as this, as obviously extremely technical, multifaceted equipment, physical, mental, you know, like you have to go in with a willingness to compete like nobody else.
Yeah.
And I would say by personal experience, knowing the two of you and having competed against you, yeah, you have it, both of you.
Yeah, it's like, fucker. So many times. Like, no, it's good. Keeps it honest.
Right.
It does. There's been a lot of people like that along the way. I mean,
for sure.
I know I'm not the only one for him. I'm sure we're like the similar age. You know, we're pretty close on as far as going all the way from junior. So we have that longevity of competing against each other at different ranks. But then there's one thing to compete against each other at the junior and amateur side. Then you get into the pro side, and it quickly becomes that we're not shit. You know, now you got to compete against Jamie Beauchesne and Chris Parrish and Annie Mappel and Wade Cox, and it's like that's a whole different level that we're like down here now, and we're gonna. How do you now make the leap to be able to compete with these guys? And that was not easy.
And let me ask you about that, because one of the things that I would feel like saying, you know, because you're like, okay, how do we compete against these guys? It seems to me that the first step, or at least that's what Boo Boo taught me and encouraged me to do at first, was you go and compete anyway, right? Like you put yourself on the dock with the Wade Coxes and that sort of gang, and you try to ski your best.
It's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think I had that approach. I don't think I was given that opportunity. I think I didn't really show up until I was able to compete. So I don't think I had so much competition as a kid, like as far as skiing in league tournaments, and you know, we had, I don't know how many, we had tons. I always remember competing or like building to something or traveling to something. But I think the worst thing that could have happened to me was if my parents, and I see it with the American skiers a lot, they have so much access so young that they get thrown into it, maybe sometimes too young. So I think in my first pro event, I was maybe 20, 21.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was already running 39. You know, I was doing some pretty good stuff.
Right.
I won Prince's Pro-Am, which was maybe like my second or third pro event. But it wasn't like I wasn't qualified to ski in it like years in advance. But in my mind, that was like one of my first events.
Yeah.
But I just kind of see it a lot where you can kind of get demoralized, where it's like, well, how am I ever going to compete with these guys?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm getting this experience of how to lose. Like, I'm not getting the experience of being able to make the final and like contest the win or contest, you know, the podium spot. So I don't know how. That's a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, from a psychological point or a psychology side, you're probably like, well, yeah, it's nice to have the experience so you can stand on the dock. And once you build good enough to be able to compete at that level, then, you know, you have these experiences, you've got that shit out the way earlier. But what happens if you aren't able to make the step up? Then basically all you've done is demoralize yourself for a number of years and maybe been like, wow, this is really a big step and I don't think I have it in me to make to the next level, which is maybe a risk as well.
Yeah, I think as you said, you can see both strategies, and it seems to me yours made a lot of sense, as you said, because you weren't lacking tournament experience.
No.
Right? Like, and
I'd failed a lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of times as a kid.
Right. And I think like the Wade Cox of your early pro skiing days might have been the French kid of your younger days, right? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So like over time, you had that experience of like, oh, I've heard about this guy. Like, it's
right.
So I can see how for you that approach might have been more productive to get in once you knew you could actually compete because you had a lot of tournament experience, right?
Yeah, I think since I was a kid, I felt like I've been trying to climb mountains.
Right.
Maybe the level wasn't attainable, whether it was chasing my brother down or whether it was this Patrick guy from France that was just, or the jump score of Jimmy Seamers, or
right.
In 94 going to Mulberry and seeing Chris Parrish, like I think maybe run 39 off when he was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
Like these crazy things. I'm like, well, I got a picture of me and Chris Parrish together when I'm 14 and he's like 17.
Right.
And he's all of Chris Parrish, and I'm all of like, I was a late bloomer. So
right.
I was this little, looked like a pubescent blonde kid, It's like, I got to compete against this guy?
Right.
There's no way.
So but then I guess on the other side of the coin, I can see of how someone who might have the scores and might end up being competitive at a pro tournament, but didn't have the constant tournament experience that you've had.
Yeah.
I can see how the other approach that Boo suggests me might be worthwhile, right? Like, okay, you're running 2F41 at the tournament in your country and you're the only person that does it. Now it's time to see who you can compete against.
True.
Right? So I think both are viable. It just depends on your experiences growing up, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really. Yeah, I don't know if. I think mine played out that way just because of access, really. I mean, I did ski in a couple of pro events in England when they had like the British Masters. I'd be like, the forerunner or whatever, right. When I was a kid. But I never remember trying to actually go to a pro event before I felt like I was ready to be at that pro event.
Got it.
We went to Italian Masters one time. Like we drove down, it was team and it was funded, and it wasn't expected that I was going to do anything. It was
right.
more of like an exposure thing.
Mm-hmm.
I got to watch Andy and Wade and these big guys go at it.
Yeah. How was that? Like in terms of watching them and your skiing as well, which I think it's a little bit different. Like I can give you my experience. I think I might have said it somewhere else, but when I saw Andy win Worlds in Recetto, that was like really skiing life-wise changing for me, right? Because I seen CP was training on Lake 3 the whole weekend, and I saw him run 41.
Yeah.
And he was last of the dock. I thought, bam, that's Worlds. And then Andy came out second and third of the dock.
He had that strong move too. He knew his competition well.
He knew his competition well, got around 3. He could have easily gone to 4 if he needed to. He just got to 3 as he was coming in, took his foot out of the kicker and said hi, a big hand gesture to the crowd, like hi, and then, but the thing was that we showed up at 7 a.m. because Dad wanted good spots. He said, we're going to watch the finals. We got to be in between 3 and 4. We're watching this properly.
He's going to sit there all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Got his cooler.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you have good seats. And the only skier that was there was Andy. Like the boats, it was a foggy morning in September, Recetto, rice fields, they can get pretty foggy, mosquitoes. And there was one dude standing on Lake 2 dock watching. The boats were covered. Tournament wasn't going to start until 9 with women.
Yeah.
It was just there staring, and I was like, whoa.
You know what he was doing though, right?
I was completely mind blown, but I wasn't skiing against him, right? I was there as a little kid watching pros.
Yeah.
You went down and you said, yeah, maybe you weren't as competitive at that particular moment, but you got to ski against these people. Mm-hmm. Were you sort of observing, trying to gather things, or how were those Italian Masters?
Yeah, I was at that point I was still on the green side, so I didn't exactly know what was out there or what the potential was. It's before internet, before I knew the name still. I didn't know scores. I didn't know what. I remember I went to my first Europeans and ran 3 at 39. I'm like, is that enough to make the finals?
Right.
I didn't know relative scores. I
Right.
knew what I could do, and that was kind of it. I knew I was making the teams. I was traveling, and I was kept don't know if I was kept or I just put myself in the dark. I didn't really know.
Yeah.
But it's probably those initial ones, and you see like, well, I'm here and they're there. It's like, wow, that's like a big jump. It's like a big way off from where I was. Mm-hmm. And it was probably that same year when we went to train with Andy, and I got to ride in his ski, and then I got to see him practice. And then I really got to see like a whole different, I went from 0 to 100 in one set, basically.
Right.
Like, I was like, do you ever do back-to-backs? Like, I don't do back-to-backs. I still don't do back-to-backs this day.
Right.
It's like, I don't, I learned so much just from that period of time. I just checked off so many questions in my life. I'm like, this is how you do it. This is how you train on the water. Boom, boom, boom. That's my system. Stuck with it.
Yeah, which is interesting because then over years, and we've had long off the mic conversations about that, you started re-questioning it all yet again.
Yeah.
And we'll get there.
Okay.
But going back to Worlds, kind of like the same thing we did with Collegiate Nationals 2003, 2005, Worlds 2005, 2009, right? And I want to ask you how the 2009 World were, and particularly with what Bob told you in terms of like, sustaining it, not just like a one shot thing, like.
Yeah, to do something once is not really that hard, but then to do things multiple times is very challenging.
Right.
It's and the difference, like 2005, I was still pretty green, and then like between 2005 and 2009, it was like a change of the guard at HO. Now I'm like Dave Wingard is my boss. Bob's helping me with skis, and we kind of went through this whole process of developing the ski together.
Right.
But I had like more confidence in 2009 than any other year, 2008, 2009. And I actually went into it thinking I could win it. Like the other ones, it was more like, maybe I'll get lucky.
Right.
This one I actually thought I could win it. And, but the plan still stayed the same. It was like speed on gates, 2 hands long. When you do these things, very simple, then you run your best scores.
Right.
It's never a micro think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Simple plan, it works. But with the difference, as you said, that this time you went in knowing you could win.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different experience, right?
Yeah, so that can really mess with your head too. So it's how do you take that out of it, like that expectation.
Yeah.
Like somehow you got to go back to 14-year-old kid, no expectations, just not worrying about the scores, just going out there, charging it, attacking, keeping it simple, not thinking too deep. This isn't the time to improve your skiing.
Yeah.
This is probably going to look like shit, but you're going to have speed on the gates, you're going to have 2 hands long, and you're going to attack. You're going to go through the entrance gates, you're going to get out the exit gates, and you're not going to remember a part of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt. I couldn't tell you what I did at any single buoy in the pass. I just know I went through the entrance gates and went out the exit gates.
Yeah.
That's it.
Particularly in that set, I'm assuming, that set in the final.
Yeah. For most of my sets.
Most of your sets.
Always. I rarely remember what happened during a set, especially in tournaments.
Right.
More recently, it's changed. Like, I've become more aware.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of part of that discovery thing that, question everything.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think in a sense, like, that's kind of what you want in tournament, right? You don't want to be thinking, you want to just reap off the benefits of all the months of work in trying to improve, and then the more free mind you have and the less you're thinking into that tournament set, the more likely you are to ski up to your potential.
Yeah.
Right? So in a sense, it's really good that you're able to do that, right?
Yeah, you want your body to take over. You don't want your mind to be running the process.
Yeah.
You want your mind needs to be free. It needs to be able to react fastly.
Exactly.
Like a computer, if you've got too many videos, too much stuff on it, it's going to run slow. It needs to be cleared, defragmented, 1 or 2 key points, and then just trust that the body's going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, if all the top guys aren't doing that, then I don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But I'd imagine that most of the people, for the best results, that's what they did.
No, for sure. And I would tell you that, like, from my professional side, that's what we try to get athletes to do. Now the thing is, it's not that easy,
No.
right?
It's hard to switch the mind off.
That's right, exactly. And one of the things that helps quieting down the chatter, whatever the chatter is, whether it is I need to focus on these micro movements, what are the expectations of me, you know, like, or whatever, is to have a clear crystal focus on one thing, or maximum two, right? Like
maximum.
Like you have your concentration there. You have learned to concentrate, number one. Then you choose your target, which for you was speed on the gate, 2 hands long, you know, and attack. And then you're very likely to have that experience of like thoughtless, body-driven performance.
Yeah.
And we know that that's what actually helps high-level performance, right? So I would agree with you. Yeah, probably that's what, to each in his own way, on her own way, that's what people are aspiring to do, those that are at the very, very top of their sport, right?
Yeah. I always say if I'm having to think my way through a pass, I'm in big trouble.
Oh yeah.
Big trouble. Like there's no way. Because then, it just doesn't go well. You just react too slow.
You're sort of reacting instead of being proactive. And
like, 3-4 weeks out from an event, hopefully you're on a ski that you like and you can stick with it. But I mean, I've always ended up tweaking the fin, ski something the days leading up to an event. But the focus, the macro focus is still, okay, what am I going to use? What's going to help me the most? And throughout mine, it's always been the similar kind of things. Like my bad habits are if I come off the handle early, I can't get rotated. So just stay on the handle long.
Right.
With that brings, it covers the other 5 things that maybe would have been in my list had I not said 2 hands long.
Yeah.
If I don't say 2 hands long, I'm probably going to get flipped to the insides, and I've probably got to pressure my feet this way or look here or move the handle. Like these 10 other bullshit keys come in that don't need to be there. They're fixed by this one thing. Right.
And I think I've had a very good conversation, I don't know if you heard it, with Jay about this.
Yeah, right.
What he was saying, like, the challenge is to find that fundamental that then takes care of a lot of things, right? And I think it's hard as a coach, probably even harder as an athlete, trying to find it on your own self, right?
Yeah. At the time, I wasn't doing it by myself. Ferraro helped me out a lot with that. I'd say more than a coach, he was a psychologist. And it was always funny. I'd always try and probe him for information because I knew he worked with HO a little bit. But I was like, well, what if I sand my bevel like this? Or, if I do and Mike's thing was, no, like he kept me laser focused on, here's your keys. When you do this, you ski good. You may not be breaking the world record, but you're probably not going to have to break a world record to win a world title. Yep. So here's your plan. Here's what you're going to do. And he just kept me on it. So he was good about distracting me. So it'd be mid-set, be like, ask me questions about girls, or it's like, something completely not related to my skiing. Right. Or like on the dock of the Worlds, it was probably something completely unrelated to what was happening on the water. He'd ask me a question about it. And it was just kind of taking my mind away from the situation and putting it into more of a lighter space that's kind of coming back to that, not overthinking, not over-processing, keeping it simple. So then your mind can be free and attack. Was he still in the picture in Canada? Yeah. Like, was he there in 2009? Yeah. Yeah, he was there in 2009. That was probably one of the last ones. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember 2011. That was kind of the heyday of the British funding stuff. That was kind of where it ended. Yeah. After Canada? Yeah. Yeah. So, and then it kind of comes back to the institutionalized versus pro. Right. So we were talking about 2009 Worlds, right? And then that kind of coincided with a big change in your skiing, I guess, structure, right? You talked about like the British team being a big part of your, development as a skier, certain kind of funding coming through, but that kind of changed at a point. Yeah, that kind of got towards the end. I think even at 2009, we're kind of scraping out the bottom of the remainder of the funding as far as, from the lottery days. So I know we had, all the stuff there at 2009, but that was definitely getting towards the end. And it was like, but by that point, pro skiing had already, that was definitely my focus. Like anything I was doing was, pro was step one. And then the institutionalized stuff was kind of like more of an afterthought. I mean, worlds is worlds, but like Europeans, per se.
Right.
This wasn't really necessarily my priority. Is if I had to make a choice between a pro event or a Europeans, per se.
Yeah.
So that I was actually put in that situation once, and I was like contractually bound to ski Europeans. You know, I had funding, I had stuff like this, but it coincided with Diablo Shores Pro-Am. And at that point, I'd already committed myself mentally. I'm like, okay, I'm a pro skier. I'm gonna, you know, I've got my sponsors. I got my people that, and I kind of asked them like, well, what does the Europeans mean to you as far as my sponsors? Like, honestly, it doesn't. If you win Europeans, it doesn't change much. But if, you know, if you go and do something, say California or Princess Diablo Shores Pro-Am, like that's huge. We can use that, marketable, that kind of stuff. So I made that choice right then, and didn't go down very well with the British Federation. You know, I had a contract with them, so basically I had to repay the money they had given me to, you know, as far as training and travel and stuff like that, because I chose to ski in a pro event versus the Europeans. So that was like a kind of a big step for me, and it was like, well, I've made this choice now. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm a pro skier. I'm committed 100%. And
yeah,
I'm not sure if I've skied a European since then. Really, I
Well,
skied 2010 because it was in England.
Yeah, and then I remember those. And then didn't you ski Recetto maybe a year or two after that? Pretty sure you won Recetto a few years after that.
Yeah, I skied in Europeans in Recetto. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was back in that was when we had not the best year of the Mastercraft.
Right.
I mean, that thing was a kind of a brick to drive.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so so on one hand, this interruption of funding certainly made your focus shift more towards pro, but it sounded that already that was something that it was going on for you already. Was it more driven by sponsors? Was it driven more by your own goals and aspirations into skiing? Like a mix of that?
I think probably just a mix of that, but mostly the sponsors. Mm-hmm. It was, you know, you only have so much time, you only have so much resources, especially, you know, in the days of trying to balance college skiing, finishing up education, as well as trying to commit to the pro events and, you know, do the best thing by your sponsors. You know, you got to give them the exposure they deserve, the money they're putting in. So it was, and that's the way I saw it going. I could already see the funding was not going to be there for skiing, and it had kind of been said to me, it's like, you know, this isn't going to be here for very much longer. We're doing what we can with what we have, but you've got to, you know, you got to really push to make those next steps,
right,
to become self-sufficient in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. So I was already kind of on that path, and I would say I was very lucky. The funding came at the perfect time. You know, it helped my parents out immensely when we were younger. Like, to be able to buy new equipment, travel to these events, that would have been a big ask, you know, for my family to have to cover that. It would have been a lot of money.
Right.
And probably wouldn't have had the same opportunities that I was presented because of the funding and the people we had access to.
Yeah, so I would imagine that not having that pressure certainly helps. And by the time this episode will be out, my interview with Jamie Bull would have already been out.
Yeah.
And she talked about a time where to go to I can't remember, I think it was a Junior Worlds. She actually did a fundraise online. I don't know if you remember that, but like she did this fundraise.
It was a long way away, wasn't it, the Worlds?
Yeah, it was
Australia or
South
something?
America, you know, like she wasn't really able to train in Canada, too cold. And she spoke of how she felt the pressure. Well, first the pressure of having the money to go.
Yeah.
And once she had the money to go through this donation, of upholding all these people, you know, that paid for her to be there. So no, certainly the financial side is crucial.
I mean, for me, it was like, it'd be like going to a casino without really spending your own money. You know, you put it all down on black. Like, it doesn't,
right.
You know, and I think I was lucky in that sense because I was given that opportunity at the right time in my life. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was a junior, when the majority of my learning, you know, the progression to get to the next level took place, for me, fell at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
And then literally when the funding got cut was when my pro side kind of picked up,
Right.
around that 2006, 7, 8, 9 period. It transitioned over to me, having to do it myself.
Yeah, and if my memory doesn't fail me, 8, 9, and 10, you won Masters 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Dude, you want to talk about like consistency and going back to the Bob conversation of like sustaining things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
What was going on in those years?
8, 9, and 10. So I think we should backtrack just a hair.
Please.
So I first signed with HO 2003, 2004. And so we'll kind of go through this a little bit.
Sure.
And then we'll get back to that. But because I think you'll roll in better. I was skiing on, so my progression of skis were like Joby, Schnitz, O'Brien, Good, and ultimately HO. But I got with HO because Chris Sullivan was training at Bennett's.
Right.
And, he was really involved in the R&D and testing, and that was cool for me to like be there at Bennett's, and then shipment would show up and Sully would pull out the 5-6 new Phantom Truth skis, and see him wrap a couple of them around a tree. I know the feeling. Sometimes what you envision in your mind isn't there, but through that is when I Chris was like, I maybe saw what Andy had, but I saw that Chris was doing it as far as like ski testing. He had involvement. He was talking with Eddie Roberts or Herb or
Right.
I could see that he was super involved, and he was one of the main guys on the test team. And that was like super appealing to me. Like I
Yeah, I can see that. Like one thing is Andy doing it, another thing is someone else doing it. Like almost like you don't have to be Andy to be, testing and trying out things almost.
Yeah, so I always had that in my mind. And then when Chris, ultimately he went to work for HO, and he became like the main guy. He became like the Dave Wingard now of HO. Yep. And he's like, hey, we'd like to have you on the team, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I can't ski on the ski. I couldn't ski on the Phantom Truth, so I was skiing on the Good, and I was going to tournaments signed by HO, skiing on the Good. I did that for a few tournaments, and eventually Sully was like, look, if you're going to be with HO, you've got to ski on our ski.
That's funny you saying that, because I love the Phantom Truth. I loved it.
Really?
I really skied well on it, both in primarily at 55, because I was still under 14.
Okay.
And my first year junior, still good. Interesting. Yeah.
But I think also I was at a time in my life where I'd made the transition from like that Good essentially got me from being like kind of a average guy to like second at Worlds, won my first pro event. Like it kind of gave me that breakthrough.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't have the maturity to want to let go of that breakthrough yet, and then I knew I didn't really have the skill set to figure it out necessarily myself. So they designed a ski, and they got the Monza. The Monza was the first ski that was made, after the Truth. And I got on that, and instantly I started liking that ski. I'm like, I can do what I can do on my Good. I can do it on the Monza.
Interesting.
And that was the ski I rode, 2005 Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Won California Pro-Am on that, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But leading into that, where we're going is kind of how the relationship with HO evolved over the years. So it was, initially it was Chris Sullivan, essentially the crew that made Radar.
Yep.
And through that transition, I didn't really know what was going on. Like I wasn't aware that, there was this internal battle with the Bob Archer group and the Herb side, and they weren't necessarily getting along. And so anyway, they left and created the Radar skis, but I was kind of left behind at HO, feeling a little bit abandoned, because essentially my whole team had left the HO team. My guys were Mike Ferraro, Matt Reaney, Chris Sullivan, Eddie Roberts. Like that
literally
was
everyone left.
Literally Chris Rossi. Literally my whole team had left. And I was
Weren't you tempted?
It wasn't an option.
It wasn't an option.
Yeah. it was, I was like, well, are you guys going to bring me along? Like, this is how I remember it. I mean, like, well, you know, we can't really afford to pay you. So just kind of stay with HO, take that check for a couple of years. And then when we can make enough money to pay you, we'll bring you across.
Right.
Well, okay, that's fair enough. And they also had Andy. So Andy was helping design the skis. So I'm like, fuck, this really is
The ultimate dream.
everybody I want
Right,
to ski
right.
with. You know, and I'm basically left with, it was me, and then there was Wade, and then they quickly hired Dave Wingirter. And I knew of Dave. I'd hung out with him a few times at Wade's place. I knew he was a cool guy. I knew he was a slalom skier and he was a jumper, so we had a lot in common.
Right.
Badass snow skier. I remember we were out at Wade's, and he was into road biking. I was into road biking, and he could crush. He had some legs on him, you know, snow skier legs.
Right.
So we had a lot in common right away. So I was like, okay, this might not be that bad. And like any good boss or you know, leader of a company, and Dave, I'd say, is the best example of this of anyone I know or anyone I've been in relation with. If he didn't know the answer, he would hire the right people that would get the answers. So it was right away, it was like, well, he needed someone to help him develop a team. So he got Tim Joyce or these people. And this is probably the story that Dave could ultimately tell you. But then it was, you know, we got Parrish, and then Wade was still there. And then with Parrish came Bob.
Right.
And I remember thinking, and Dave was, you know, he's always reassuring. He's like, look, don't worry about it. Like, you know, we'll figure it out along the way. We'll keep moving forward. We'll keep pushing. And
I wish we had a camera, because your impression of Dave's kind of gestures was very on point.
Was it on point? Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
We spent some time together.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've spent some time together. But
So things were piecing back up now.
they were piecing. So I went from being like feeling very abandoned, very kind of left behind, to in quite a short period of time thinking, okay, I think this is going to be okay. And I didn't really know Bob at all. Like I knew the name. I knew he had some credentials as far as, you know, 5-time world champion, world record holder, all these kind of things. But what I knew about Bob was that he had been instrumental in helping CP with some of his stuff when he skied with O'Brien, and then asking a couple of questions around and people were like, you idiot, like you didn't know this about Bob? You didn't know about like the testing he had done and kind of the history of the stuff they had done with skis. But when Bob kind of came along, I'm like, okay, I think this might be all right. I think we're going to be okay.